Trevor Noah is used to being in the public eye, but as a boy, his mother Patricia was forced to hide him indoors, away from sight. And she lived in constant fear that the police would take Trevor away from her. In his memoir, Born a Crime, Noah shares his story of growing up in South Africa. Trevor was born to a black mum and a white dad at a time when that was forbidden.
Different races being together was a crime, an official crime. There was an immorality act in the country.
Under the apartheid regime, mixed relationships were illegal, let alone having a child together. In fact, Trevor's parents' love was punishable by up to 5 years in prison, were they to be caught. And the children of such couples were often taken away from their parents. If the police found out about Noah, Patricia would never see her boy again. When she had to take Trevor out alone, she pretended he wasn't hers if she saw the police around. In spite of all her efforts, she was arrested frequently, mostly for being in white neighborhoods past curfew.
She would spend time in jail, whether it be a week or a few weeks. Oftentimes she'd have to pay a month's salary to get out.
During these times, Trevor had to go live with his granny. My grandmother kept me locked in the house. If the police did show up, it was a constant game of hide and seek. Whenever Noah snuck out, he couldn't even make friends. The neighborhood children were scared of him because he was neither black nor white. On top of that, Patricia raised him and his brother on her own, and they struggled to get by.
Writing stories about growing up in a home where we sometimes didn't have food is painful.
However, Noah never felt poor because his mum made sure they had fun times as well. Together, they explored places where they didn't have to spend money. Trevor's favorite memory is of them having picnics of cold meat and butter on bread. Most importantly, Patricia taught her son of a world where good things are possible. When people told her she was wasting her time, Patricia stood her ground. Even if he never leaves the ghetto, he'll know that the ghetto is not the world. She taught Trevor that his voice and ideas were important and expanded his thinking. Today, the lessons Patricia imparted to her son helps him in his career.
I don't exist in a world where I only listen to the people I agree with, because then how will I ever know how to dismantle or think about your arguments in a different way?
When Trevor turned 10, apartheid finally fell. But he was yet to face the biggest challenge of his life. He almost lost his mum. After Patricia parted ways with Trevor's dad, she married Abel, and he made their lives a living hell. He was kind to her in public, but cruel behind closed doors. During his teenage years, Noah couldn't protect his beloved mum from Abel.
Remembering stories of growing up in a home of domestic abuse, painful stories.
What's worse, he often overheard people telling her she was overreacting or that she did something to deserve it. While Patricia struggled to break free from her domestic horrors, Trevor could no longer tolerate it. To make a living, he sold pirated music and DJ'd at gigs. Trevor did everything for a better life. He learned English, started acting, and did stand-up comedy. Little by little, he became successful. And a few years later, he started winning the hearts of international audiences on tours. It seemed like his mother's words were true all along, and the sky was the limit. Knowing how much she meant to him, no one could understand why Trevor no longer visited Patricia. He still loved his mother and cared for her a lot, but Noah couldn't bear seeing her hurt by his stepfather any longer. So when Patricia finally decided to leave Abel after more than a decade, Trevor was over the moon, until a phone call shattered the comedian's happiness. In a fit of rage, Abel had shot Patricia in the face and back, and few thought she'd survive. He also threatened to come after Noah too, because he'd paid for Patricia's treatment in a private hospital.
Miraculously, she came out on the other side with no permanent damage.
In the end, Trevor's former stepfather was only sentenced to probation. For a long time, Noah was consumed by anger and bitterness. When his mother told him she didn't hate her ex-husband, Trevor was astounded. Patricia asked her son to stop hating Abel for his horrific acts and to rather pity him. She didn't want to carry the burden of hatred, so she found the strength to forgive Abel. It took Trevor years and writing his memoir to finally make sense of it all. I was lucky enough to be in the shadow of a giant. My mum's magic dust sprinkled on me, and I hope I have enough of it to be as brave as she was and continues to be. Patricia became the example Trevor chose to live by every day. His difficult life and his mother's silent strength inspired him to follow his dreams. As the busiest man in comedy, he continues to spread laughter and love, but he'll never forget his roots and the woman who's always been his greatest cheerleader. There's no greater warrior than a mother.